chosen one. That community that would not stop attacking you is now being forced to face a truth they tried to bury. You are anointed by the Most High, and it shows. The same circle that plotted your downfall is watching its predictions collapse in real time. They already know why you unsettle them. The question is whether you recognize it yet, because once you do, their leverage evaporates. Their obsession with you is not about hatred. This is about panic, watching its own narrative collapse in slow motion. In the beginning, they had everything controlled. They controlled the story. They established the tone. They attached the labels to your name. And as long as people accepted the version they presented, everything flowed smoothly. They did not need proof. The environment itself did the convincing. They maintained comfort. They rode high on confidence. They had certainty about how this would play out. But then something shifted. And it was not because you got louder or fought harder. Time did something they did not account for. Time started revealing patterns. Your behavior did not match their accusations. Your outcomes did not support what they were saying. You kept moving forward in a way that contradicted everything they said about who you were supposed to be. And that is when you could see the shift from confidence to panic. The attacks became repetitive. Notice how they stopped bringing new information and started recycling the same old claims. That is not strategy. That is desperation. When a story is solid, it does not need constant reinforcement. Truth speaks once and stands forever. Lies need maintenance. Lies need to be repeated until people stop questioning them. What you are witnessing is a maintenance crew working overtime on a narrative that is falling apart. What really shook them to the core was this reality. You did not even defend yourself the way they expected. You did not spiral into explanations. You did not beg for understanding. You did not perform the breakdown they were counting on. Your consistency did all the talking. While they kept explaining who you were, your life kept demonstrating who you were not. That gap between their words and your reality created pressure, and pressure always exposes true motives. The goal stopped being about truth and became purely about control. They were no longer protecting the community. They were protecting the comfort that came from believing they had power over your narrative. You outlasted the emotional window they were banking on. Most attacks operate on a fatigue model. Keep pushing until the person reacts, collapses, or confirms the narrative through sheer exhaustion. When that did not happen with you, they did not know what to do. People who expect an explosion do not have a playbook for restraint, so the volume increased, not because it was working, but because it was the only card left in their hand. Your endurance did not just survive the attacks. Your endurance completely destroyed the theory they built about you. And this is where the power dynamics flip entirely. From day one, they were not just watching you. They were running an experiment on you. Every reaction, every pause, every misstep was being catalogued. They were building a psychological profile, predicting exactly how you would break under pressure. They had the whole thing mapped out. Maybe you would explode in anger and prove you were unstable. Maybe you would beg for mercy and prove you were weak. Maybe you would turn bitter and prove you were the problem all along. This was not guesswork. This was based on pattern recognition from watching others fold. You were supposed to follow the same script everyone else did. The script always works, until it does not. Your endurance broke their algorithm. You kept showing up whole when you were supposed to be in pieces. You maintained composure when you were supposed to be coming apart. The pressure was supposed to expose your flaws. Instead, it revealed their assumptions were built on fiction. And once endurance enters the equation, all their excuses evaporate. You did not win by being louder or fighting harder. You won by outlasting the framework they tried to trap you in. That is a type of victory they have no defense against. Time became your ally. Anyone can fake strength for a short period, but very few people can remain steady through extended periods of being misunderstood, targeted, whispered about, lied on, and systematically excluded. That kind of endurance exposes what is authentic, and what became crystal clear is this reality. The version of you they predicted never showed up. No meltdown, no public breakdown, no behavior matching their descriptions, and that forced them into a corner they cannot escape. They could not claim they were reacting to your actions when your actions remained measured. So what did they do? They shifted the target. Now your calm is suspicious, your restraint is calculated, your peace is fake, your growth is manipulation. When they could not attack your behavior, they started attacking your survival itself. And that is how you know the theory collapsed. Endurance became the enemy, because endurance exposed the lie. Your presence exposes the hidden hierarchies their power was built on. Some environments run on invisible rules. Who gets grace? Who gets protected? Who gets questioned? As long as everyone plays the assigned role, the system feels stable. The moment you showed up fully yourself, without bending or performing, those quiet rankings started to wobble. Not because you challenged anything directly, but because your presence made certain advantages visible. You did not have to call anyone out. The imbalance showed itself naturally. People noticed who was allowed to make mistakes and still be defended. People noticed who could speak recklessly without consequences and who had every word examined. Once those patterns become obvious, authority starts to feel fragile. That is when they apply pressure, not to restore fairness, but to restore order. The attacks were not personal at first. They were corrective. They were pushing you back into a lower position without anyone having to admit a hierarchy even existed. When that did not work, frustration set in. You kept existing outside the lane they quietly assigned to you. You were not playing the part of the grateful outsider or the manageable voice. That refusal alone exposed how much control mattered to them. If this resonates with your inner knowing, hype this video to help fellow chosen ones find their way here. What made everything worse was how others responded to you without meaning to. People listened. People paid attention, not because you demanded it, but because something about your steadiness disrupted the flow of automatic loyalty. When influence forms without permission, it makes unspoken power structures nervous, so the attacks escalated, not to silence you, but to warn everyone else. This is what happens when someone does not stay in their place. The irony is brutal. The more they attacked you, the clearer the hierarchy became. People could see who was being defended without evidence, and who was being challenged without cause. The system told on itself. You did not dismantle anything. You revealed everything. And when power is revealed instead of assumed, it loses its grip. Your presence could not be tolerated quietly, because you brought clarity into a space that depended on invisibility to survive. They are being cornered by their own receipts. At first, everything they said about you lived in the moment. Loose statements, confident opinions, strong claims with no need for backup, because nobody expected challenges later. It was all spoken as if time would not matter. But time always matters. Messages get saved. Reactions get remembered. Patterns start forming. What is cornering them now is not your response. It is consistency. Their words from the past do not line up with their behavior in the present. What they once claimed with certainty now sounds exaggerated or outright false when placed next to actual outcomes. The story they told about you required you to fail, spiral, or be exposed. None of that happened. Instead, the receipts started pointing back at them. You will notice sudden rewrites of history. That is not what I meant. You are taking it out of context. Things were different back then. Those are not explanations. Those are escape routes. When people feel cornered by their own words, they do not correct themselves. They blur the record. But the clearer the trail, the harder that becomes. Screenshots do not argue. Timelines do not get emotional. Patterns do not take sides. They just sit there quietly contradicting the version of events being pushed now. Here is the part they did not plan for. You did not have to collect evidence aggressively. Life did it for you. When someone keeps attacking a person over extended time, they create documentation by default. Each repeat accusation adds another layer to the record. Each overreaction strengthens the contrast between their words and reality. The past will not stay buried. The receipts exist, and they do not need interpretation. Their unity is artificial, sustained only by having a shared enemy. At first glance, the group looks organized, loyal, coordinated. But look closer. The glue keeping them aligned is not respect or shared vision. The glue is fear of losing the story they built around you. Their cohesion depends entirely on one factor: someone to attack, someone to blame, someone to keep them aligned without having to confront their own flaws. You became that factor. Once you existed outside their control, everything...
People don't understand good and evil. These entities have been around before we were around, so they deserve a lot more respect than what we're giving them. Evil has been around before us, so when we choose to do evil, that's our fate. God let it exist for a reason. Alright? That's the same with good. We get a choice. We're in the middle. We get a choice. Good or evil. That's it. That's it. And it's good and evil on how we treat each other. Because how we would treat each other, right, is how God will want you to treat each other. And if you do evil, that's how the devil treats you. So you're going to get treated exactly the same way by these entities. And these entities deserve our respect. Both parties, both sides. God and Lucifer. Because that's their way. And their way was here way before we were here. And they deserve respect. Not to play with these forces. Not to fuck around with them. Because they don't fuck around. They're real. They're real as shit. And that's it. You choose to murder, that's your choice. For money, that's you. That's the devil's playground. You become that. And it's hard to get out of that. And when you die in the body, you don't repent for your sins and all the crimes and the intentions and the gossip that you do towards one another, bear false witness, you're going to suffer consequences for your crimes by yourself. The group, whoever you work with, isn't going to help you. They can't help you. Not against these forces. Not against God and the devil and Lucifer. They don't play when it comes to you. Lucifer has his ways. He's stuck in his ways. That's it. If you choose that route, you're going to end up like him. That's as simple as that. If you choose God's route, which I think God's route's the best, is better, it's the only way for me and for everybody. But our dumbness, when you choose the devil, honestly, your IQ lowers, dimmers, and you become more obsessed over yourself instead of God. You lose yourself. Been there, done that. So Jesus is right. Forgiveness is the key. And his way is the only way. The truth and the light. That's it. Whether you believe it or not, it really doesn't matter. Because it's all on you. You're going to lose yourself, your body, your soul. I prefer you not to. And find love, find peace, find happiness, find joy. Because it isn't just sleeping around. It isn't just who can get the most profile, who looks good, who's got the bigger titties. Who cares? Because your body, when it dies, it goes into the grave and it smells. And it, yeah. can imagine. So the body doesn't last forever. The soul, the spirit, is what drives the body. Your body is like a ship, and you're the pilot. Okay.
Thing about the group started to wobble. Conversations that once felt unified now contain cracks. People argue quietly. Alliances shift. Loyalties become transactional, and their confidence in themselves begins to crumble. Without the attacks, without the shared target, they have nothing holding them together. That is why the attacks keep coming. This is not about you anymore. This is about preserving their fragile structure. The irony is brutal. While they thought the attacks would diminish your presence, the opposite happened. Each effort to control or discredit you exposed the hollow nature of their cohesion. Their supposed strength depended on your perceived weakness, and as your presence continues to defy the narrative, they are forced to confront a reality they cannot fix. They are only unified because of you, not in spite of themselves. You did not create this tension, you just existed. By remaining steady and unshakable, you revealed the invisible fault lines, their friendships, their hierarchies, their supposed loyalty. All of it depends on a villain to maintain. Remove that villain, and they have to face themselves. The louder they attack, the more obvious it becomes that...
Does anybody ever think of being in God's shoes for once? For a day? Well, he's done it for thousands and thousands of years, so looking over humanity, things that is not brought to public, that he sees behind the scene, that, man, that would be so heartbreaking. To see the things that God sees, and to be able to deal with it. And watching us do what we do to each other. And he's got to try and help that. That's got to be hard on him. It was actually would be pretty easy, but if you're very compassionate and very understanding, and then you put yourself in God's shoes, saying you got to send your own son down because of a hiccup that happened over Adam and Eve and whatnot, and to save humanity. And send your own son down to die the way he did on the cross to save them. It's pretty heartbreaking. So actually, not saying I feel sorry for God, I feel sorry for what he's seen and what he has to see. And that's heartbreaking. Not only the depth of it, the action, the heart of it that's actually going into it, that the person is not focused on God, and that he's going to lose that person to his own sin, and God sees that, because we all work in inequity on the planet not for one another, but for ourselves. We don't care anymore. And I think we don't care because we're too scared of getting hurt. And we have a lot of fear for one another. And people say that you're not meant to judge, but they do judge. And the only judges that should be able to judge are the ones that's trying to protect themselves. That's the only reason why they judge. Because if they know they're going to be safe around that person, are they two-faced? Are they going to be nice now and then evil later? Or evil now and nice later? Let's carry on.
That their solidarity is performative. Every overreaction highlights the truth. This is a group held together by opposition, not authenticity. Look, you already know the attacks weren't random, and if you're paying attention, you can feel it. Their walls are closing in. So let's talk about what we're doing about it. That's why I built Destiny Engine. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are using the Dark Elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve cooperative intelligence. The beauty is, you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and your subconscious is rewired while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own lies. This is why I created it in the beginning, so everything they did to break you becomes fuel for your purpose. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your destiny engine for $1 today and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. You did not recruit followers. Witnesses formed naturally. Your influence was not loud. It did not need a campaign or an explanation. People started noticing, not because you told them to, but because they could not help but observe the way you moved through life, the choices you made, the calm consistency you carried. That alone terrifies groups that thrive on control. They expect influence to be manufactured, attention to be bought, loyalty to be earned on someone else's terms. You broke all of that without trying. The witnesses around you did not join to prove a point. They simply observed and understood something the attackers refused to see. That quiet recognition is the most inconvenient kind, because it cannot be discredited easily. Verbal attacks can happen, actions can be distorted, lies can be repeated, but people cannot unsee what they have already witnessed. Real recognition grows organically. Manufactured loyalty collapses under pressure. This is why the attacks escalate. It is not just that you exist. It is that people are noticing and validating your integrity on their own. Your presence becomes a benchmark, a silent standard that exposes who acts with authenticity and who does not. Every attempt to manipulate perception backfires, because the truth of your character is already visible to those paying attention. It cannot be faked or erased. They struggle with this because they believed they controlled influence. That recognition only happens if they allow it. But when it forms naturally, it flips the entire power dynamic. The more people quietly acknowledge what they see, the more frustrated they become. And the most humiliating part for them is this. You did not need to guide or persuade anyone. You did not orchestrate admiration or force understanding. It formed because of who you are, not who they hoped you would be. That realization forces them to confront the one truth they cannot argue. You are recognized because you earned it effortlessly, and nothing they do can change that. The attacks reveal that they studied you more than they ever studied themselves. When a community obsesses over someone, it is rarely about curiosity, it is about control. They catalog your habits, they analyze your words, they scrutinize your decisions, they memorize your patterns. They think that if they know you completely, they can predict and manipulate you. They dedicate time, energy, mental bandwidth to dissecting every move you make, all while they conveniently ignore the glaring contradictions in their own behavior. The irony is brutal. They understand you better than they understand themselves, and that imbalance fuels their frustration. Their attacks become frantic, because deep down they know you are untouchable in the ways that matter. They have studied you enough to realize that evidence, truth, and consistency are on your side, but they have not studied themselves enough to adjust. Every accusation they throw is a reflection of their assumptions, not reality. By focusing so much on you, they have trapped themselves in a loop of comparison. They constantly measure their perception against your actual presence and constantly fail to reconcile the two. This overanalysis exposes their weakness. The more they monitor, the more obvious their obsession becomes. They try to predict your reactions, but you rarely react the way they anticipate, and that unpredictability shakes the foundation they rely on. They expect control because they studied patterns, but studying someone does not equal understanding them. Meanwhile, they remain blind to their own hypocrisy. they have not examined their motives or insecurities with the same intensity they use on you. What the attacks reveal most clearly is this reality. The obsession is not about you being a threat. It is about them confronting the fact that they have invested more effort into dissecting your life than understanding their own. That realization terrifies them because it means all their strategies and narratives crumble when placed against the simple fact that they are acting out of fixation, not wisdom. They are being forced to admit you outgrew the role they assigned you. From the very beginning, they imagined you fitting into a carefully constructed box. They decided how you should behave, how far you could rise, how much influence you could wield. Every boundary they drew was meant to keep you predictable, contained, manageable, but you did not stay inside that box. You grew beyond it in ways they could neither anticipate nor control. Your growth is not flashy or performative. It is steady, undeniable, natural. Every achievement, every calm response, every quiet display of integrity slowly dismantled the expectations they held, and that is what makes them furious. They did not just want you limited, they wanted to define your limits. By refusing to conform, you forced them into a moment of brutal honesty. The narrative they had written about you no longer applied. The role they assigned did not exist anymore. This revelation is unbearable for a group that thrives on certainty. Their attacks intensify, not because they are exposing flaws in you, but because they are trying desperately to pull you back into the framework they created. Every insult, every rumor, every attempt at manipulation is a signal that they are wrestling with the truth. They are powerless to dictate your trajectory. They expected compliance, but instead they were confronted with independence. The kind of independence that highlights their own dependency on control. Outgrowing the role also exposes their assumptions to anyone paying attention. Observers see the contrast between what they tried to enforce and who you actually are. It is impossible to hide when someone consistently surpasses expectations and operates from a place of authenticity. Ultimately, you did not just outgrow a role, you outgrew their capacity to understand you. And when people are forced to admit that someone has moved beyond the limitations they imposed, it is disorienting, humiliating, and infuriating. Your growth became undeniable proof that control never belonged to them. The attacks are attempts to provoke a version of you that no longer exists. The people attacking you are not responding to who you are now. They are reacting to who they thought you would be, or who they hoped you would become under pressure. They have built a mental version of you, one that would crumble, panic, lash out, or confirm every accusation. Their attacks are carefully designed to provoke that reaction. Every insult, every manipulation, every rumor is a trap meant to catch the version of you that exists only in their imagination. The problem for them is that version does not exist anymore. You have changed, evolved, adapted in ways that make their old strategies useless. You respond with steadiness where they expect chaos. You remain calm where they hope for breakdown. You stay measured where they anticipate erratic reactions. Each attack lands on an empty target because the person they think they know was never real. The version they are trying to provoke has been replaced by someone far stronger, far more aware, far less manipulable. That is what drives their frustration. They are fighting a ghost, yet they cannot let go. The attacks continue because giving up would require admitting that their assumptions were wrong, and that is something their pride cannot allow. Meanwhile, every time they fail to provoke you, the gap between expectation and reality becomes more obvious. Observers begin to notice. The community sees that their tactics are ineffective, that the chaos they promised is not materializing, and that the calm individual they tried to control is thriving despite their efforts. By attacking a version of you that no longer exists, they are revealing their weakness more than yours. The more they attempt to provoke a reaction, the more apparent it becomes that their power was never real, and that the real you cannot be bent, manipulated, or broken by the outdated strategies they cling to. They are being forced to confront the fact that you never needed their approval to remain intact. From the very beginning, their attacks were designed to break you, to make you question yourself, to force dependence on their judgment or validation. They assumed that constant criticism and pressure would make you crumble, or at least conform to the image they wanted for you. But you did not play by their rules. You stayed whole, steady, unshaken, completely independent of their validation. That reality terrifies them. They spent so much time thinking their judgment mattered. Their opinions shaped outcomes. Their approval could define you. Every calculated attack was meant to remind you of your place within their story. When that did not work, every action they took became louder, more aggressive, more frantic. The louder they screamed, the clearer it became that your stability never depended on them. They were not confronting weakness, they were confronting autonomy. And it is impossible to bully someone who does not need you to survive. The frustration shows itself in how predictable their attacks become. When someone depends on your approval, a single attack is enough. But when someone does not, every tactic fails, forcing them to recycle the same strategies. Their obsession grows because they are witnessing something they cannot control. A person thriving without ever needing permission or consent from the very voices trying to tear them down. Your independence also forces them to look in the mirror. Their belief that they held power is exposed as false. They realize that every attempt to define or shape you has failed. They attack to assert control, but the truth is in your presence, calm, intact, unshakable. And that is the final proof that you were never dependent on their approval. When a community is being forced to see your anointing, it does not happen all at once. It happens in stages, and each stage brings a different kind of resistance, a different kind of revelation, and a different kind of confirmation. The first stage was denial. They convinced themselves that what they were seeing was not real. Your composure was fake. Your peace was an act. Your growth was temporary. They kept waiting for the mask to slip, for the real you to show up and validate everything they believed. But that day never came, and the longer they waited, the more unstable their denial became. The second stage was rationalization. When they could not deny what they were seeing anymore, they started making excuses for it. Maybe you got lucky. Maybe you had help they did not know about. Maybe the timing just worked in your favor. Anything to avoid admitting that their assessment of you was fundamentally wrong. But rationalization only works until the pattern becomes undeniable, and your pattern of consistency, growth, and integrity became impossible to explain away. The third stage is where most of them are right now: forced acknowledgement. This is the most uncomfortable stage for them because it requires them to hold two contradictory truths at the same time. They know you are anointed. They can see the evidence. They can feel the shift. But they are not ready to say it out loud, because saying it out loud means admitting everything they built their identity around was false. So they are stuck in this painful middle ground, attacking you publicly while privately wrestling with the reality that nothing they do makes a difference. Spreading rumors while secretly watching to see if those rumors affect your trajectory. They already know the answer, but they keep testing anyway, hoping that maybe this time will be different. The Most High did not just protect you through this season. The Most High positioned you in this season because your anointing needed opposition to be fully revealed. Not to you. You already knew you were called, but to everyone watching. The attacks were not designed to destroy you. They were designed to document you. Every assault became evidence. Every lie became testimony. Every attempt to diminish you became proof of what they were actually dealing with. Think about the precision of this. They could have ignored you. They could have moved on. They could have let you exist in peace, but something would not let them. Something kept pulling their attention back to you. Something kept making them obsess over your every move. That was not their choice. That was divine orchestration. They were being compelled to create the very evidence that would confirm what they were trying to deny. Every meeting they held about you became a recorded testimony of your significance. Every conversation where they analyzed your actions became documentation of your influence. Every moment they spent trying to figure you out became proof that you operate on a level they do not have access to. They thought they were investigating a problem. They were actually chronicling a calling. And the beautiful part, they cannot stop now, even if they wanted to, because stopping would create a different kind of problem for them. If they suddenly went silent about you, people would